Hello Linux fans, and welcome to another episode of Destination Linux, where we cover Linux news, reviews, and anything else that may be fun or interesting in the Linux world.
And I'm Rocco, and this is episode 16 of Destination Linux. Hi, Rob.
Hello, Rocco. How are you, buddy?
Hey, man. I've been having a late night, but it's all good.
I was going to ask you if you got any sleep last night. There's a story behind that question.
There's a story behind that question, but we're going to start with the good news. So,
share that.
Well, we officially have, or I should say, we now officially have a website. So the website, you can go to listen to the podcast, subscribe, all the links, everything will be there, posted every week, is destinationlinux.org. Which also means, Rob, we have a new email address.
Boy.
Oh my gosh. Do you think I can get through it?
Do you recall what that new email address is?
I believe it was comments at destinationlinux.org.
Very good.
The .tech is no longer, well, it's there, but it's not going to, the .org is what we're using. So comments at destinationlinux.org.
And we'll double check that before we put that in the video notes, of course.
Yes, it's already changed. So that's a good thing. We want to thank Joe from Late Night Linux, Joe Resington, for helping us out with that. He did a phenomenal job with getting everything set up and ready and posted, and it looks really good. And like I said, we have the links that everybody needs for the show. You can subscribe to the RSS feed there, and you can also watch the vidcast of it as well on it. So
that's great. So if you're watching this, Joe, we appreciate you, man.
Yep. So the RSS feed hopefully just switched right over, and nobody should notice a difference besides maybe a few extra episodes of Destination Linux in their podcast player, which is okay if you want to listen to it again.
That's a possibility. I had a few that showed up as if they were new, when we made the switch, but the good thing is they were there. So hopefully those of you who go through a podcast app, you didn't miss anything.
Yeah, the last 14, you have a choice of listening again or marking them all as played.
That's right.
Just don't miss last week's episode with Martin Wimpers.
Yep. Well, and the one before that with Joe. And
yep.
So for sure.
All right.
Now we've got some other news to discuss.
We got bad news, Rob.
Yeah. Nobody likes bad news.
Nobody likes bad news. Can we just skip the bad news and go on to the interview?
Well, we could, but we need to share it. Just for those of you who go to the Destination Linux YouTube channel, Rocco explained what happened because you were dealing with it all night long.
Well, last night, one of the videos, actually the video with Joe, got flagged for violating community guidelines. So it didn't give an explanation of why. It just got removed. I got a message saying that the video was flagged, and after review, they agreed that it violated community guidelines, and they removed it.
Wow.
No specific issue of what was violated, but they definitely said it violated community guidelines. I have no idea why.
If you would quit cussing like a sailor, Rocco, that may help us out, man.
I'm telling you, if I would just stop doing that stuff, it would be great. But anyway, it was within maybe 5 more minutes. 2 other videos got flagged. AJ Rising and the chat we had with Matt got flagged and removed. So we basically had now the two that came in later, they got flagged together, so they almost came in as one strike. So we had now 2 strikes against our channel within 5 minutes and could basically do nothing about it. So I did appeal each one of those, and within minutes they were back up. The videos were back up. But then our channel is now flagged, so we can no longer update or upload videos that are longer than 15 minutes. And according to the channel description, we can no longer upload videos at all. I haven't tried yet to do that, but it's a whole messed up situation. I've heard many horror stories of YouTubers getting this problem, and I just don't understand why there can't be some transparency in what's going on.
Well, when you first told me about this, and you were dealing with this all night long, Rocco, I was fast asleep. I was sawing logs while you were dealing with all of this, so I had no idea this was going on. So initially I thought, okay, we got caught up in some of YouTube's new changes, and there are tons of articles online where big-time YouTubers have had a lot of their content pulled out of the blue with, like you said, kind of no real explanation. But then you explained to me how two of them were flagged almost simultaneously, which then leads me to think, okay, is somebody targeting us for some reason? Because if you go back and you look at our content, I can't imagine where any of the content in those 3 videos would have violated anything.
The only thing, well, I have my suspicions that it seems to me that somebody, maybe an individual, started flagging videos, and like I said, I don't know exactly why. I mean, you can only speculate, and I don't want to sit here and speculate until we know exactly for sure, because then we'll get this one flagged and taken down.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, hopefully we haven't gotten into a pattern with this or anything like that, and hopefully soon we'll be able to upload. So,
well, next week, if you don't see hopefully we'll be able to upload at least a 15-minute video. So if at all next week you don't see the main episode of Destination Linux, we may be able to upload a video stating, hey, we haven't been able to get the video, and we'll give you a link to look at it or to watch it or whatever. I'll have to upload it somewhere else.
Yeah.
But we'll figure it out one way or another.
We'll figure it out. And I saw a comment the other day from someone who had some issues on YouTube. And they said, it's really a shame that YouTube sort of has a monopoly on this whole thing. I mean, there are other channels that do what YouTube does, but not at the magnitude. It's
not at the level of people that are watching YouTube. I mean, there's just no comparison.
Yep. Well, let's move on from the bad news and let's talk about good news. We've got a guest this week, and we enjoy our guest. This has been fun having guest after guest. They're much more interesting than I am. Rocco, you're more interesting than I am as well, by the way.
Well, that's debatable. But, Rob, who is our guest this week?
So we have a great guy, Jody James, who is the man for OBR or OBRevenge, and I know many of you out there are familiar with that distro. It's an Arch-based distro, and we got to spend some time with Jody and get some real insight as to what he's been working on and kind of changes that are coming. So should be a great show, Rocco.
Let's get to it.
Let's do it.
Welcome, Jody, to Destination Linux.
Hey, thank you. I'm happy to be here. Honestly, knowing some of the other guests that you guys have had, when you asked me, I was really honored, and I had to look around a little bit, and I was wondering if I was being punked because I don't really feel like I'm the caliber of some of the other folks that have been on here, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, Jody, it's awesome to have you on Destination Linux. You and I, when Linux Quest kind of first kicked off, you and I had an opportunity to chat, and but you've done a tremendous amount of work on OBR since you and I first had our chat. And but for those people out there who maybe they don't know who you are or why you kind of got into developing OBR or OBRevenge, if you want to touch on that, I think that would be great, just to give people an idea how you kind of got into this and started developing.
Sure. Getting into Linux, for me, I guess we can all thank Windows 10 for that one. And matter of fact, I think when we spoke before, I'd mentioned that. Really what prompted it was a Windows 10 update made my laptop that I use daily almost unusable. And so I started looking for alternatives and watched a lot of YouTube videos and decided to try Linux. I installed my very first Linux distribution in, I believe it was December of 2015. It was around then. I know it was around Christmas time, around the holidays. And it was Ubuntu with the Unity desktop. I know I hate on Unity a lot.
Wow.
And really, back then, I thought it was awesome. And, even Unity as it was ran better than Windows 10 did on that machine, which is the same one I'm, talking to you on now. From there, I guess I kind of jumped in with both feet. I didn't have any development experience at all. The only introduction at that point that I had to even open source was through Android, which I know you guys talked about a lot about that, on the custom ROMs and things like that. Never on the development end, though. I was an enthusiastic user, I guess you would say. But that's what got me into Linux. And then I wanted to learn as much as I could. It was just a really cool community the more I got into it. And some great YouTubers. Neither one of you guys really had channels up and around about that time, but there were some great ones. Joe Collins, and I know one of your previous guests, AJ Rozig. I think I've watched almost all of the videos they've put out. And
same.
And really, really wanted to learn. I mean, it was just really cool to me. So
now I got to ask you this, though. So you started out with Ubuntu. How did you go from Ubuntu over to the Arch world?
It was almost like a personal challenge. It was Arch was supposed to be difficult, and so it was. The more I read about or heard about Arch being a pain to install and to work with, it was kind of like challenge accepted. It really, it was just fun. I remember the first day that I decided I was going to install Arch Linux the Arch way. I sat down and did it about 6 times, and the first 3 wouldn't boot. But once I got it, then I started doing it. This will tell you how much of a nerd I really am. Just the other day, I realized that I hadn't installed Arch Linux the Arch way in months. With other things, of course, now, with the installers and stuff, but I sat down just because I hadn't done it and did it in a virtual machine just to remind myself how to do it for fun. And that's the nerd that you're talking to.
That's your Saturday afternoon, huh?
I guess so. Well, the kids were gone, the wife was at work, and, I guess there were worse things I could have been doing,
Yeah. Yep.
But anyway, I guess development-wise, I started with just some simple shell scripts, and the more I learned that, hey, I can actually make things work on here, and I really kind of jumped into it and moved into more coding in Python and moving now more towards C as a compiled language. And the more I learn, the more I find that I have to learn. So I'm still working on that. But it's actually putting together a distribution. The initial goal really was I wanted to put together an Arch Linux installer, basically a script more than anything else to install Arch Linux. And then I got into some of the build tools, and before you know it, I had an actual booting, Arch Linux spin at that point. And it just kind of took off from there. I wanted to see what all I could kind of put together into it. And I guess I actually looked this up because I was curious. The first upload to SourceForge for OBR was in July of 2016, so just this last July. So, the entire project's less than a year old now. It's still, more or less in its infancy, but I think we're off to a pretty good start.
Yeah, without a doubt. Now, between the Ubuntu, your first dive into Linux, and then dipping into Arch and taking that challenge, did you do much distro hopping, or was it, okay, I've seen Ubuntu, now it's time just to jump right over to Arch?
I tried every distro that I could, and now it might have just been. It might have just been for an hour. I mean, I needed the hotline at that point. But yeah, I mean, I tried. If you name it, I probably tried it. I really kind of fell in love with the Arch way of doing things. Well, some of it anyway. There are some that through OBR I'd like to try to improve on somewhat anyway. And nothing against Arch, it's an awesome distribution. It's an awesome base. But there are a few things that I would like through OBR. I'd like to try to help improve some of the user experience and make things a little bit easier. And I think we've accomplished some of that already, and there's still a lot of work to be done.
Now, my last run with OBR, you had kind of eliminated some redundancies in some of the apps that were doing, pulling the same role. And It felt like you had really pulled a lot of things together. Certainly from the aesthetic standpoint, I mean, it's just to me, it looks like a man's distro. Just,
well, absolutely.
Well, yeah. Jeez.
But no, it was looking great, and I know even from just past month or two, you've been hard at work on some other things. So right now we're looking at still using the Openbox environment. Yeah. Okay.
When is the release of the KDE version?
I've been working on that, and the funny thing is, with every update, it just keeps crashing. So I can't.
Right. All right, we'll leave that one go.
Well, and see what Jody's not telling us. That's because he's using KDE 4.4.
Right, that's what it is. He's definitely not trying out Plasma 5 because that wouldn't happen.
Absolutely, there's the problem. If I'd have just known.
So your last point release was when, Jody?
It was last month, or actually the very beginning of this month. I try to put out an updated image and updated ISO every month, approximately. There's not a set release time. It's more of when it's ready. Yeah. But and I don't like to try to pin down a certain time, because if I don't feel like it's ready, then I'm not going to upload it. It's not going to be released. I've worked really hard at this point to keep it as rolling, just like the Arch Linux base that it's built on, as possible, and planning on implementing a few things to try to enhance that even more. Occasionally there's a few features that I wasn't able to build into an update, so you'd have to actually install a new image to get those features, and I'm really trying to remedy that. I'm looking at actually creating a few more packages that include a few things that were initially hard-coded into the image, so that those can be updated through package updates rather than having to install a new image, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, from a standpoint of speed, that was one of the things that I've always been impressed with OBR, is how fast it is. And, I don't run tests, but I just do, like yourself, I've run so many distros, you just kind of get a feel for how things are. And has that always been kind of your main focus? Hey, I want this thing to always be fast?
Absolutely. And part of it, part of it building this thing was more or less out of necessity for me. This is the type of system that I need, because I don't have high-spec hardware. And so the fast tends to be a byproduct of low resource usage, more than anything else. And that's one of the reasons for it. With OBR, you'll notice now it's running on top of the Openbox window manager. But Openbox being really just a window manager, it's not a desktop environment. So that's the base of the desktop environment. But the entire desktop environment is kind of built up from there, and it's really customized. You'll see the typical Openbox install, and then you see OBR, and they're a lot different. This is right. This is a very customized desktop experience, and most of the applications have been handpicked from other desktop environments or other applications that come default, and the others are written specifically for OBR, like the control panel and things of that nature. So it trying to bring it together in a cohesive experience, but then also really building a unique experience. It's not an experience you can get by installing XFCE or installing LXDE. Those are great desktop environments, but you can't really duplicate the same experience you get with OBR or with one of those, because it's very customized.
Well, that's without a doubt. And one of the things that's always stood out to me is the panel switcher, you know. And it's a little reminiscent of the Mate tool set where you can go in and change there, but also the way you've gone in and added tabs for the various categories under the control panel and everything.
Right. You know, and that the panel switcher, something to mention on that is that, you know, with I think you were talking about, like, you know, Mate, the Mate tweak where you can change the panels up. Excuse me. That's a great tool, but in the end, what you've got there is the Mate panel with a bunch of pre-configurations. So they configure it to emulate other looks. And with OBR, when you pull up the panel switcher and you switch, say, if you're running the XFCE4 panel and you decide you want to run the Mate panel, well, you actually change from the XFCE4 panel to the actual Mate panel. It's not an XFCE4 panel that's been configured to look like the Mate panel. It is actually the Mate panel, you know. Wow. And the same thing's true with LXDE, the LXDE panel, and the Tent. Of course, the Tent 2 panel is kind of a standalone that you see a lot with Openbox anyway. But and that's something that it's a kind of a way to emulate sort of other desktop experiences all within one place. Once again, because of how I work, I get bored. I like to change things up. So, and when I'm ready to change things up, I didn't want to have to reinstall a whole new desktop environment. So,
you were trying to curb your own distro hopping ways, weren't you?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. And hopefully there are some other folks that find that useful as well. The pre-configured layout section is actually something I just pushed out an update to yesterday. Now there's a kind of a GNOME-ish pre-configured layout where at the top left, if you click on there, you actually get an GNOME-ish style overview look. You know, so it kind of changes things up a little bit even more. Needless to say, it's constantly still under development.
Well, you've put a lot of effort into not only putting stuff like the desktop switcher in, but the welcome screen itself, the hardware configurator where, you know, you pick your NVIDIA drivers or whichever hardware drivers you have. I mean, there's a lot of work that you put into this that makes it different from just a vanilla Arch distribution.
Right. Yeah, and it's something that those are the things that I think they kind of make something unique, and they make it just that. It's not that a user can't go out and you know, figure out how to do these things and pull up a terminal and do that. It's not that I don't think they have the ability, but even me, I mean, I know that I can do it, but I still, when I'm setting up a system, if I'm setting up drivers or things, I'll still tend to use the GUI, you know, if it's available. So it's more of a convenience thing, but some of those little touches I think really do make a difference.
Well, it reminded me more of, and this I think these are the only two distros I think I could compare from the tool set perspective, and that's what I've always called them, are tool sets, to where if you need to do this, here's a GUI to do it, and you put it in place. And that's MX16. MX16 and OBR, I think, are set up in a similar way, that here it is, all laid out for you. And there's a lot to be said for that, especially from a new user perspective, because let's face it, it's not easy to go in and learn all the various terminal commands and read through everything you got to read through to do it from the terminal, you know.
Right, and that's true. And MX16 is a great distro. I've installed it and used it myself. Yeah, I have to admit, there's always one partition running OBR. However, I still like to look around. I install other distros and see what they're doing, and sometimes gather some inspiration, and sometimes just wow, how did they do that? And MX16 is really one of those. They do a great job over there. Yeah. And like you were talking about, looking up and finding out how to do things. The people will talk about the Arch Wiki and how great it is, and truly it is. I mean, it's one of the greatest resources. I'm on it all the time. But for a newer user, it might as well be in Swahili or something. I mean, honestly, it's not for a brand new user. And I remember when I was brand new, people would say, look at the Arch Wiki, and I would try to look it up, and it did me no good at all. I needed, more guidance. I didn't understand the terminology. I didn't understand what they were saying. Now, obviously, I look it up, and it helps me a lot. But for a newer user, that type of stuff is still difficult. So I think it's important for newer users to have access to some of those tools that really helps them out in setting things up and helps with their experience.
Well, I think that's what OBRevenge hits. It hits that mark where you have newer users who, okay, you're not going to take a brand new Windows user and put them on OBRevenge or any Arch distribution. But anybody that's ran a Linux distribution at all can now take OBRevenge and install basically an Arch distribution and at least go through and have all of these tools to help them out. Like I said, the welcome screen, the hardware drivers, what Rob was talking about with the Windows switcher, all of these things that they would have to do manually, they can actually do and perform, and it allows them to use an Arch distribution and maybe even learn to then go through it and do it manually, but it allows them to ease into it.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear you say that, because that's really one of the goals of the project. Is that I understand that OBR, at least at this point especially, is kind of a niche distribution. It's not for the brand new Linux user, but it's more for the user that may be new to Arch type user. A user that's been on something else, maybe Ubuntu, Linux Mint, something like that maybe want to try an Arch-based system. And I think that's kind of the target audience, at least at this point. But hearing you say that, really, that's great, because that's really the target of what we're looking for is somebody who's maybe wanting to get into the Arch ecosystem, so to speak, and trying to find a little bit easier way into it.
Yep.
Well, Jody, put you on the hot seat just a little bit. So you don't quit working on this. I know that from time to time you'll shoot me a message, hey, we're doing this, check this out. So is there anything you'd like to share as to what you've got plans for, or anything new coming on with OBR, or anything you're working on that you'd like to talk about?
Sure. If you leave it open like that, we might be here all day. I actually have an update that I'm thinking about calling it the Linux and other stuff update, because it specifically has to do with Compiz. And other than I believe his name's Dave. Great
Dave, yeah.
But the guy cracks me up. He spent a whole series on putting, I think it's 3 or 4 videos on putting Compiz on OBR.
Right.
Because technically it just doesn't work. A lot of people have asked me about it over the last few months about how to do that, because they want the Compiz eye candy and whatnot. And my answer was always just no. It won't work. And the thing of it is that because OBR is built on the Openbox window manager, it's an Openbox session. It's not another desktop session running Openbox. It's an actual Openbox session. And Compiz itself is a window manager. So you can't have 2 of them running at the same time. When you try to start it up, it just crashes. But over the last couple of months, I've actually got Compiz up and running on OBR, just to contradict myself. The way it will technically work is they won't run at the same time, but you'll be able to check a box on login, kind of like you would for a different desktop environment, but you'll be able to check at the top, the top right, which window manager you want to run that session, either Openbox or Compiz. And the hard part of that wasn't really setting up Compiz to work, because that's basically setting up Compiz to work as a standalone window manager similar to Openbox. The hard part was continuity. I refused to put it out and to call it done until you had the same experience either way. Basically, I didn't want to compromise the experience just to have a different window manager and some more eye candy. So we have really worked hard on making sure that the continuity is there. If you make a change, say with the panel switcher in an Openbox session, and then you log out and log into Compiz, the change stays the same. If you set up settings, it basically behaves as the same desktop environment. You're just changing out the window manager. And so that's one update that should be coming, hopefully next month or so.
Man, that's pretty huge, actually. I mean, to go from it just couldn't happen to now it's a reality.
Well, where there's a will, there's a way. It was kind of one of those deals. It was one of those deals where, again, challenge accepted. But I spent most of the time on it, but there are a couple of guys helping me out a little bit more now. But I've spent quite a bit of time on it trying to get it to work correctly. Even up to the what you consider the Openbox menu. When you right click on the desktop and you get all the application menu, that'll be there when you're running Compiz. It's pretty much going to be a consistent environment either way. So, and then Dave can have his eye candy. So hopefully it works out.
So you've got to call this the LAOS edition.
That's right.
We may do it, and there's actually going to be a package in our repo, in our repository that is basically a compatibility package, and I was going to name it the Linux and other stuff Dave's OBRevenge Compiz compatibility package.
Oh boy, that's great.
He'll love it.
But yeah, and hopefully he watches this and he takes this lightheartedly. He does a great job. I watch a lot of his videos, but he cracked me up with that. Boy, he went as far as to install a whole new desktop environment over the top of OBR just to get Compiz running. It was
wow.
Hilarious. But, along the lines of some other stuff, I'm actually working on another installer. Rocco had an experience earlier today, I believe, with the Calamaris installer that didn't work out so well, and that has been a problem for a few folks. The Calamaris installer, generally about 90% of the time, is great. Installs, without an error, without a problem, and it's not just on OBR. I know I've seen issues with other distributions using it as well, and the Calamaris team does an awesome job. By the way, that's a distribution agnostic installer that these guys have made modular enough that it can be used and really, really customized. So I wouldn't take anything away from them at all. And OBR will continue to offer the Calamaris installer. However, I'm working on another option there. Most likely, the finished option will be more of an online installer. That you'll have an option when you boot up the ISO when you want to install that you can use the Calamaris installer and install it as you have been, or you can use an online installer that of course you'll have to be online, but it will download all the packages fresh, so that when you're finished installing and reboot, you don't have 186 updates waiting for you.
That's kind of like an Interrogus type install.
It is, except it'll work a little bit differently because Interrogus has so many different variables with the different desktop environments that they've got a lot to worry about there. That's another team that honestly does a fantastic job. But a lot of the issues that I've seen coming with their installations from time to time have to do with all the different things they have to deal with to provide all the options that they do. The one for OBR is going to be obviously a bit more specified. So I feel comfortable that when it's ready, it should be pretty safe to use.
Man, that'll be exciting to see for sure.
But it won't offer multiple desktop environments like KDE.
No, but there is the Revenge installer that is out there. If you're interested in a,
I actually have used that, and that worked out pretty well.
I'm glad to hear that. That's another kind of a little, I call it a side project, but shoot, it gets about as many downloads or more than OBR does. People seem to like it. That's one that for folks that don't know, it installs basically vanilla Arch Linux on your system, kind of in the vein of the old Architect installer or the Feliz installer that you can get now, and Arch Anywhere, and some of those. It provides a little bit more of a graphical environment that rather than being console-based, which makes some people a little bit more comfortable. But that project really is something I did solely just to try to give back to the community, to try to help some folks out that wanted to get into Arch. I probably don't spend quite as much time with it as I should. When I first started it was one of those projects where I thought, I've installed Arch 100 times. I can write out something to do this. How hard can it be? And I've regretted that, man.
That's a very big question. How hard can it be?
That's right.
It is. It took months to get that right. Of course, working on it off and on, but it's finally to a point where I feel like it does its job pretty well. Of course, right about the time we released it, Arch Linux did a huge Xorg server update and changed a lot of the X drivers, the video drivers, and so I'm scrambling as soon as it's released to go back and try to make corrections so people actually have a system that boots when they're done. But I guess it's just kind of how it goes with Arch.
Oh yeah. So what's the latest kernel that you're running? Or is that something you're always updating as well in a rolling kind of way?
Absolutely. We're on the 4.10 series, and I can't remember the latest one that it's on right now, but pretty much the latest Arch kernel is what you're going to get with OBR. With each release as it is. Now, when you install it, if there's a newer kernel out for Arch, you'll be getting that one as you update. So it's and that's one of the great things with Arch is that it stays pretty cutting edge as far as those things. Now that can sometimes be a double-edged sword, as we all know. Excuse me. But brings me to another topic actually that I wanted to kind of throw out there, and this is a little bit more of a long-term goal. But there are a couple of really two issues that I see when people getting into an Arch-based distribution. One of them, as far as Arch itself, is difficulty installing. That a lot of people have a hard time trying to install Arch if they even try it, because it's intimidating, and that's something that hopefully OBR, and other Arch-based distributions have addressed. But I feel like OBR, we've addressed the installation issue. Well, it's not too hard to get it installed, except for Rocco earlier. I'm sorry, man. But
it's all good.
But the other issue that you see a lot with Arch-based distributions is, to put it in one word, is stability. But where the stability issues come up are generally in the update process. And you either get an update that for some reason or another causes something to break on your system, which is actually a little bit more rare now than what it used to be. Or you get an update that breaks other updates. There's an update, there's file conflicts, and you can't update your system. Something's broken. I think we've all seen that.
Yep.
I check every morning the Arch website because of the Arch Linux base that OBR is on, and look for, basically the announcements. And every time I see an announcement that has the words manual intervention in the update process, my heart sinks, because I know Google Plus is about to explode. The forum's going to go crazy. But of course, it's always a base package that's included in OBR. And so long-term wise, something that I'd really like to be working on is I think it would be great, is there are other distributions who have tried to solve this problem basically by throwing everything into their own repositories and holding those packages back until they felt that they were more stable. And, just an example is another great team is Manjaro. That's basically how they work things. Is you're getting basically the Arch packages more or less, except they get held back and they recompile them, put them in the Manjaro repo and do more testing with them. And of course they'll make a few adjustments and stuff for Manjaro, and then they get pushed out. Another option, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. However, for OBR and the size of team that we're working with, was most of the time is me doing all of that packages, and that represents a huge duplication of work, because I'm generally going to be using all the same Arch Linux base packages anyway. I would rather look at more controlling the update process. So that when there's a package, if I can control that update process, and specifically when the updates come out, and say there's one of those dreaded manual intervention updates that comes out where you're going to have to delete this file and change this before you can update, and then stop in the middle and all that stuff. If I can control that update process, then I can make it to where I can automate that for the end user, so that by controlling that update process, I don't necessarily have to recompile those packages myself, but I can take care of those issues for the user because I'm controlling how the update is going out to the user. I can package scripts, other packages with that come out and take care of those manual intervention problems as they come out. So the user doesn't really know the difference. We can also look at, basically what I'm looking at is our own update application, rather than using, PAMAC Updater, which does a great job. Introducing an OBR update application that would, number one, you could schedule when you want to check for updates, because with Arch, you're looking at updates daily, but you can set it up to check daily. You could set it up to check weekly, monthly, however you like it. And it would basically that application would phone home back to us and see when it's safe, kind of a safe updater process to go ahead and bring in those updates. And when it is safe, and when I say safe, we've determined that, these updates aren't going to cause a problem. And if there is anything that needs intervention, we can package that up and send it out to the user. Then we push out those updates or basically push out a notification, hey, bring in these updates and we're ready to go. So that's something that I'm looking at trying to implement into OBR over the next few months or so is basically more of a safe updater process to take some of those worries away from the end user about the manual intervention issues. And, you're trying to update your system and you get issues that come up, these file conflicts and things that occasionally happen with Arch, and so I think that would be another step towards making this a bit more new user friendly.
Are you talking about like what happened, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week ago or less, where there was an update that had a conflict and you actually needed to go in and put a terminal command in to resolve it before you could actually update?
Right, and that's an example of what I'm talking about with these file conflicts. And occasionally, there'll be updates that break other packages, and we can try to help correct this through the update process rather than, or by controlling the update process and sending out tools and packages to help correct those file conflicts and to help correct the issues that cause the broken packages before they actually get out to the end user.
So basically the update would come out, you wouldn't push it out, then you would wait for the fix that actually came out, the terminal command, and the update manager would actually initiate that command and then allow the system to update. Correct.
We would push out basically a script or however it would work is that update manager would take care of the manual intervention, the deleting the files, or like you said, it would take care of the conflicts for the user so that we don't have to worry about, as a user at that point, having to check the ArchLinks website daily and see why, there's a problem with this update or why this stopped working or what's wrong with that.
Right.
Jody, I think you've touched on then the next question I had for you, which was, what's the hardest part about, creating and maintaining your own distro like that?
Probably the hardest part is more on the support end, as far as there's so much hardware out there and there's so many possible issues. And generally speaking, when somebody comes and contacts us through the forums or through Google Plus, we're generally able to help them out. We're most of the time, and I try to stay pretty active on those. There's another guy named Josiah that helps me out a lot on the social networking, the forums, and most of the time we're able to try to help out with those problems. Occasionally, there's just some hardware issues and things we can't overcome, but. And excuse me, those are the frustrating issues that we really want to overcome. Because if somebody wants to install OBR, by golly, I want them to have the opportunity. I want it
absolutely.
To work. So
yeah.
So that's something that is one of the more difficult parts. The actual development, honestly, is what I enjoy. Putting it together and trying to make things work. Kind of like we were talking about Compiz earlier. It's a challenge, and that's what I enjoy. That's the fun part to me.
Yeah, so I'm going to shoot Dave over at Linux and Other Stuff a message and just ask him to do a video on putting KDE on OBR.
And just maybe it'll happen.
It absolutely might.
Oh, boy. So let's see. You are now on DistroWatch.
Yes.
Is that correct? You're listed on DistroWatch. You're right under Linux Mint last time I looked. No, I'm kidding.
Rob checks DistroWatch every day, you know.
That's right. But no, your user base has grown quite a bit over the last 6-7 months. You've probably seen quite the spike, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, the user base is growing and it's growing some in popularity, and, you know, and that's great to see. But it's kind of like I was talking to somebody, I guess, on Google Plus a while back. I've kind of decided that it doesn't matter to me if 2 people are using it or 200,000 people are using it. You know, as long as people are finding it useful, and I'm gonna keep working on it, because like I said, that's the fun part to me. And the Linux community has done a whole lot for me to help me out with everything they've taught me. And so if I can give back with, you know, a distribution that helps other folks out, or an installer script that helps people out, then that's what I want to do.
Oh, that's awesome. So have you had an opportunity to, like, out of the blue with friends or family or extended family, you know, you come through that scenario where they go, man, this last Windows update hosed my system. Can you help me out? And then you've got that opportunity to say, hey, try this.
Yeah, I actually have. There was a guy that I work with that I actually mentioned that to. Now, I did not put him on OBR. I put him on actually Linux Mint, and after showing him around some of the others that to start off with. I'm going to keep working on him, though. He'll be an arch guy before long.
So that's a gratifying feeling, isn't it? I mean, did he like it? Was he taken to it, or?
Actually, very pleased. You know, and he was a lot like a lot of users, is that he primarily used his machine for, you know, email, browsing the web for light tasks, but kind of ended up in the same boat that I did, and that, you know, that Windows 10 update just kind of tanked his computer. It tanked his PC to where he couldn't really use it, and we turned it into a Linux box, and it's been working for him really well. So that's
a great feeling, isn't it?
It really is. And now, if I can only get my wife to install Linux, we'll be all right.
Wow.
Yeah, I still Rob, you were my hero. I've seen those videos getting your wife on. I think it was Ubuntu Mate.
Yep.
Excellent job. If you have any tips, let me know.
Well, I was going to say, let me have my wife talk to your wife, and maybe you know how it is.
Absolutely.
So, have you got I know you said it's ready when it's ready, but are we talking a couple weeks out to your next point release, or?
Most likely a week or two from this point. You know, it's pretty close. You know, there are some transitioning things that I'm doing just in the way that I build the ISOs and the way we're building the images, but we're pretty close. So I was actually working on it earlier today, and I'm feeling pretty confident with it. I think by next week or the week after, we should be in good shape.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that'll be one to try. You know, about every week, maybe every other day, I get an itch, you know, and I'm looking for a reason to try something. So look forward to it. Well, anything else you want to share, Jody, or discuss about?
You know, I not specifically as far as OBR. You know, if there's something else that you guys had, but Rocco, I do have a question for you.
You go right ahead, man.
Ever since I watched the first video on your YouTube channel, I wanted to ask you this.
Oh my!
You have the smoothest voice over the recording that I've ever heard. Do you do any jazz DJ work or anything? You know,
no, man, no. As a matter of fact, you know, I was listening the other day to like some of the earlier videos that I did, and one thing was I started out with a headset mic, and two, when I started out using a regular mic, I was always recording at night. And there's, you know, other people in the house, so I'm like talking real soft, and I'm like, and I now I listen to them videos, I'm like, why am I talking like that?
and I don't mean to make fun. What I'm thinking is, you know, I could hear it now. This is hey, this is Rocco on Soft Jazz 191.3.
So what you're saying is I could get a job in radio.
There you go.
I think so. I think so. Absolutely.
You let the execs know, and then we'll talk, all right?
All right.
Well, Jody, and I agree with you. He does have that great jazz radio voice, you know. It's luckily we got him on the radio, or on the Linux side, so.
Yes, absolutely. And Rob, I noticed, not too long ago that you passed 5,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Man, that's awesome.
Thank you very much.
It seems like it really wasn't even that long ago that I was sending you a message to congratulate you on about half that. And the channel's been doing great. So you guys do great work, and I really enjoy the podcast. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate that immensely, and you developers are a huge part of our channels growing, because without those new releases and all the hard work you guys are doing, we have nothing to talk about. You guys are doing all the hard work. Rocco and I just sit back and talk about it. So,
yep.
Well, Jody, thank you so much, man. We appreciate it, and I know many of the listeners and viewers are going to love hearing from you. And I know many of them have tried OBR, so this is always awesome to get that kind of inside scoop, and then put a face with the developer name and all that good stuff. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jody.